beautiful, young, the illusion of perfection. These elf-like beings come in a couple names. Most commonly associated with nymphs, and I guess naiads would be another option, all depending on what edition you look at. As they are described, they generally take on the humanoid form similar to an elf. Pointed ears, slender bodies, generally the works. The trade-off, however, they typically do not wear clothing, for they live in the embodiment of nature. More specifically, places untouched by man, which is a double entendre considering they need men to be able to reproduce their species. Whether they attract them into the first world or into their own homelands as is, all varies on it. Beyond that, the closest you get to the rarities of it is the lovely Nyrissa, Kingmaker's pretty much premier star nymph. As with the common nymph, as opposed to her, she's significantly more powerful, seeing as she's one of the oldest, if not the oldest nymph. But typically, nymphs themselves are probably one of the most powerful CR7s you can run into. Their AC is one of the top classes because of their hidden ability benefits. Granted, they are essentially druids that live in their own habitat. Stats-wise, they are ridiculously good charisma and durable to no get out. Ironically, suffering from strength is their biggest thing, as it is their lowest and by far the lowest stat. Other than that, they typically carry around a dagger. Not quite sure why they have a dagger, but everything's got to have a weapon, so I guess that works. Featuring their best and most dangerous, their blinding beauty. A aura that sheer power and reflection of their own beauty blinds those who look at them. Thankfully, it is suppressible and typically only used as punishment for those who intrude upon their land and those who use violence. So basically the common adventurer, but even then, if you choose, you can do good for them and they will reward you as such, whether it be through boons or assistance or even the safest places. But even then, not to follow up too far off too, they have their inspiration, which is typically as the old knight's tale of giving them a lock of the hair, a favor, whatever it is you want to call it. Giving bonuses to skills, bonuses to bardic performances, all kinds of levels of benefits. Other than that, they are able to track you through it, so carelessness be damned. And they are typically, ironically, monotonous, which is kind of funny to think about, but that's how they would choose to be. As otherwise, they do cast spells in and of itself. Typically, they mostly own druid spells, though some of the more patriotic ones do pick up levels of sorcerers and oracles. And their baseline spellcasting is pretty on par for someone who lives in the woods, as they have their Dimension Door, which is their spell-like, and not actually spell-casting. But they use it to retreat back into their domain or hide in their domain. Other than that, for some reason, they prepare the oddest spells in the world, but who knows? Seeing as they don't actually need water breathing, it's weird that they prepare it. I guess for those underwater special times. Call lightning is an interesting choice, but they live out in an environment that would make call lightning useful. Arc skin adds to that AC they just already have extremes of. Flame blade to produce something besides a dagger. Tree shape sounds very accurate to anything. Considering they live around their animals and refuse to eat animals, their charm animal spell is helpful, I guess. Although Endure Elements is once again another weird spell. Entangle Obscuring Mist makes sense. I'm not sure what they need Produce Flame for, but there. I don't believe they actually own Dark Vision, because they're only Fae, so they don't own Dark Vision. So they'll, I guess, Light and Stabilize. Guidance. Yeah, those are pretty basic choices for 0-level spells. Who would have guessed? But reassuringly, because they have Charm Animal on there, it'll at least help them against those who track into their lands to be charmed and compelled to, not including their already dangerous blinding effects. Shortly thereafter, they do have a nice little benefit of actually being able to stun things, and just simply at a glance. Sure, it's a standard action, but a stun is a stun. And of course, fortitude saves are always brutal, but they're charisma based, so it is dangerous. And a 2d4 rounds of stunning is kinda brutal to get hit by, even on the most accidental saves. And then, of course, there is always their probably considered best racial traits of stealing from the paladin for the most part. Granted, they are typically chaotic good, so you probably won't see a paladin anytime soon. As with most Fae, they don't generally like laws a whole well. But they do get to add their charisma modifier to their saves, and deflection to their armor, all functioning one way. Which is probably one of the best and powerful abilities they can hang on to. And then, of course, even without their charm animal for some reason, they do steal some features from the druid themselves, such as their wild empathy, which provides a nice little bonus to being friendly with the animals in the area. Granted, most of them add a whole lot of protection, so I couldn't picture them really having issues with animals in the area. I guess if there's some kind of prideful animal that wants to deal with, but who knows? And then, last but not least, Nerissa herself. Probably one of the most well-known ones hanging out from Kingmaker. If not, well, you probably haven't played the video games or their latest expansion on it. She herself is one of the oldest, and unfortunately, based on how it worked out for her, fell in love with one of the eldest and declared herself an eldest. And with anything of hierarchies, they disagree with that aspect and gave her the boot out of nowhere. Oddly enough, as opposed to the typical standard sight of a nymph, she owns green skin. I guess modesty, so we can't really acknowledge the swimsuit bikini look she's got going, but on top of that, she has her cloak that's able to fly around, and probably one of the biggest domains in the area. Whether she be tricking the main cast into doing stuff for her, or tricking the main beast. Beyond that, her once lover was banished to the Shadow Realms. Or, well, the Shadow Plains, I guess would be more accurate. No Yu-Gi-Oh! In this one. Banished to the Shadow Plains. And she herself had fled to the Material Plains. And as they were not happy with her escape, she had to fight off a Jabberwocky. And survived and made it out of there. Whether I don't remember if she killed the Jabberwocky or not, but she did have to sort with that problem. However, in return for surviving, I guess, she got herself access to a lesser Jabberwocky, which pretty much ended up becoming a nuisance inside the Kingmaker itself. So once again, not exactly a friendly target for her. And then she offered essentially the lands that you want to conquer as a source for our lovely friends in the in the first world. Saying Fae realm, I think it's a 5th edition thing, but either way. Other than that, the only other notable feature she owns would be the Briar Sword. A bastard sword, or yeah, bastard sword that can cause a variety of effects. Common things like confusions and charms and like dominate monster and other such features. Realistically, it could probably do a lot of stuff. It features itself as a weapon that goes this. Its biggest beneficial thing is the fact that it resolves attacks on touch, which defeats a lot of ACs for the most part. Beyond that, there's a couple other well-known ones, but they're mostly second edition, so I don't care to kneel enough on them. They're usually named and then ignored. I think there's only one other adventure path I could name that even remotely cares. But for the most part, nymphs are pretty much the nudist druids of the world. Naked at all regards, and seducer of men for the most part. I'm sure they bound to have other choices, but for the purposes of why they even go for anyone, they aim for reproduction. So if you really feel the need to go and deal with the equivalent of blood-sucking value, you can take your chances. But overall, it's one way to get yourself into trouble with the forest. But for now, bye-bye!